This is Jeff Mondelli, Vice President of Grocery Merchandising at Wakefern Food Corp, and you're listening to the CPG Guys.
Welcome to the CPG Guys podcast. Your hosts, Sri Rajagopalan and Peter V.S. Bond, explore how brands and retailers engage consumers in an increasingly digitally driven world. And now, here are the CPG Guys.
Hello and welcome to the CPG Guys podcast. I'm of course Sri, co-founder, co-host of the CPG Guys, co-founder, partner of Think Blue Consulting. As builders, connectors, and amplifiers, we shape the future of commerce to drive your growth. Please do listen to my older daughter Ria Raj's music, www.riaraj.com. That's RHEARAJ, and her new song Hot Couture, been out for just over a month now. And my younger daughter Laura Raj, of course, is a member of the Geffen Records Universal Music Group Cat's Eye, whose socials are now in the multi-millions on every possible platform that exists. Joining me today, of course, is my fellow co-founder, Peter V.S. Bond, and when he's not co-hosting this podcast, he serves as head of industry and client engagement at Flywheel, the e-commerce acceleration division of Omnicom. There was a week right at the beginning of the baseball season where he'd rub into me every day. Yankees went 6-0, but the Dodgers went 9-0, and suddenly it's 14-6, even though they may be 700 and the Yankees are 632. Who's got the highest batting average in the history of baseball through the first 20 games? Aaron Judge, of course, 407 home runs. End of story, mic drop. There's anything he says at this point is secondary. It's irrelevant. Over to you, Peter. How you doing?
I'll be more than happy to take Shohei Ohtani and Yamamoto and what I've got lined up for the end of the season, because Shree, the Yankees have no pitching. You better hope their bats are hot all year long, because if they cool down, you got nothing on the mound. But that's just my POV.
In anticipation of this response from Peter, I did my homework over the course of this past week before this recording and looked at how many of those 27 wonderful championships were won with slugging versus pitching. 11.
Well, good luck, Shree.
I'll take my odds.
You take your odds.
How many championships do the Dodgers have?
Well, I know they are the reigning World Series champion. I know. All I know is you violated this last year at the World Series. You violated the single most important rule of baseball that Tom Hanks taught us in the movie A League of Their Own. What's that lesson, Shree? There's no crying in baseball.
The lesson is this is a CPG Guys podcast and we have a guest and we're making the guest wait and it's not. Thank you, Peter. Anyway, welcome to the show. Before we get to our guest, we want to ask you to consider following us on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a rating. That rating tells us how we're doing. A review tells us whether we're having the right quality conversations with the right people. And now for the much promised main event. Today's guest is a special one indeed, one that I have worked with directly in a past life at General Mills. He has got the distinction of making the rare transition I personally observed from being a pharmacist to leading center store grocery merchandising. That doesn't happen often, but most of all, he's great at what he does. So we've been waiting on the CPG Guys to have him. He is also a proud winner of the CPG Guys Drugstore News Award for Omnichannel Merchandising Leadership in 2024. So please join me in welcoming Jeff Mondelli, VP of Grocery Merchandising, Wakefern Food Corp, to the CPG Guys. Jeff, how you doing, man? Thanks for joining us.
Doing well, Peter. Hope you guys are doing well. Glad to be here. It is a long time overdue, so happy to be here. And just want to say that there is no worse way for a Philly fan to start a podcast than to listen to a Yankee and Dodgers fan talk baseball.
Oh, boy.
We'll start only up from here.
I did know he was an Eagles fan. I forgot about the Phillies part.
Jeff, I have to say this. The Phillies have one of the best AAA ballparks in Major League Baseball. I mean that.
To be noted, Peter and I diehard.
Right up there with your AAA attendance, your home games there.
There you go.
To be noted, we're diehard baseball fans. We'll be at the Cubs and Dodgers next week on Wednesday. And of course, Peter's coming down to visit me for Yankees at Dodgers in a couple months. So we're looking forward to that. Jeff, welcome again. Thanks. We'll include links to, of course, Wakefern's company page, your profile on LinkedIn, on the digital liner notes of this episode. And now on to our conversation. And I'll start with what I introduced you by. You are indeed a rare breed of merchants that has successfully transitioned from farmer to CPG. I'm not sure if I've seen one before, and you're good at what you do. You settled into the role. You're obviously crushing it. What did it take through your career journey? How did you want to make this transition? And how did you actually accomplish this?
So I think there's probably a few of us pharma converts floating around the industry, but certainly not many. And for me, listen, I think it's a couple things. It's about the individual, your talent and your drive, but it's as much about the people around you, right? So on a personal level, it started with a mindset and a goal to continue to challenge myself, do more every day. Actually started out as a pharmacist in one of our retail locations for 5 years right out of college. So as much as I had a goal and an approach to be curious and hyper competitive and humble, if I didn't have the right group of people supporting me and allowing me to grow, probably would have never happened. Same thing from an organizational standpoint. To take someone who's in what you probably consider a specialized field and to let them grow in other areas is a special thing. So I think it's both of those things. Certainly being humble is critically important. If there's one thing a retail environment will do to you very quickly is show you how wrong you are. So you've got to approach it with the willingness to learn, right? You either win or you learn. You take the losses and you stack them on top of a couple of wins and get better every day. I think one other thing, though, that's very important is as I've been put into more senior positions, I have certainly not been the expert in the room as I've acquired new teams. And, a lot of good leaders ask for honest feedback. I don't believe that most actually want it. I actually want it, right? To get that feedback from my team who's been doing what I'm doing longer than I have and learning from them while I teach them has been something that's been, I think, instrumental to my ability to move around the organization.
Peter, wait a minute. He said he wants honest feedback. He said it. I didn't. Let us give it to you. The Phillies suck.
Wow. Wow, you're just guns a-blazing, Shri.
This week you're not wrong. We'll see about next week.
There we go. Jeff, thanks for joining us today. It's good to see you again. Shri and I were so honored to be attending the Total Store Award last December when your career was recognized for that particular award and the accomplishment. So that was a great honor for us. Unlike a brand, as a retailer, you're much closer to the consumer, right? They're walking in, they're looking at the products they're buying, they're talking to people in the store. So obviously you have a front row seat to consumer behavior. I'd love to hear from your perspective some of the changes that you've seen, big important changes in how consumers shop since this horrible pandemic we suffered through for 2020 through 2022, probably that range. What kind of comes top of mind to you in terms of how consumers have changed their buying and shopping behaviors?
Okay, so I think that's a great question. I'm going to way oversimplify the history of the last 5 years, but I think if the goal here is to tie this back to what can brands take from at least my point of view on what consumers have experienced. There's been a couple of things, right? So we all remember, Shri, you remember it as well as I do, the pain of just getting product to shelf and the issues with supply chain. Pre-2020, consumers, suppliers, retailers, we went to sleep every night really with no concern over the ability to get product to shelf. Just-in-time delivery, efficient supply chains, high value on return on assets to be as efficient as you can. All great until the world changed. And all of a sudden, it was not about the bells and whistles. It was about, do you actually have what I want and need? And I think that piece, before we go into all the other ripple effects, I think is the one that's most foundational. That probably was like this aha moment around, is there a value to just the core of what I do? And how do I make sure that I've got contingency plans in place to manage customer expectations? It took years. In some cases, we're just getting better. It took massive rationalization of assortment across many CPGs, deprioritization of innovation. You saw just a lot of changes, right? So that's one. Second, the rapid proliferation of shoppers behaving in an omni environment. It started likely because shoppers didn't want to experience crowds. And how can I get what I need without physically going to the store and spending an hour shopping? But what that did was just change behavior forever, right? The growth that we've seen there has been significant. And And as a retailer, again, we just talked about from a supply chain standpoint, do you have what I need? We then transform, do you have what I need and can you deliver it to me in the way that I want to be served? And the tough part for retailers and brands is the same customer doesn't want to be served the same way every time. That is truly what Omni is. Omni is not just an online shopper. It's I shop through all modalities, and depending on my need state or my state of mind, I'm going to use a different one. And to make sure you're relevant to their needs is a challenge, and one that has rapidly become more important over the last 5 years. Just completely changed the game, right? You take that, and now you move into hyperinflation. Shri, I remember I cite this every time I talk to you, but we're sitting in FMI 2022 in a suite, and you give me your inflation forecast for the next 18 months. Inside, I'm like, okay, next meeting. No way that number's right. He nailed it. What that did to consumers was strain their wallets and their ability to provide essentials for their families. What it did to brands was put tremendous pressure on P&Ls. What did we see? We saw two things from a value-seeking consumer: significant increases in private label penetration in a basket and significant increases in sale item penetration. Both very difficult for a brand to manage, right? To manage a shift in what people buy and then the percentage of what people buy of yours that's on promo, very difficult. But it's here to stay. We haven't seen that promo penetration move change, and private label is certainly continuing to grab traction. Final piece before we, I guess, maybe detail the four things that I'm talking about. If we're sitting here April of 2025 and we're not talking tariffs, then something's wrong. The tariffs is probably just the buzzword or the sexy word, but consumer sentiment is definitely waning. You've referenced volume challenges before in previous podcasts. Those things are putting pressure on consumers and certainly now putting pressure on brands as a result. I think suffice it to say, all of that comes together. The mission hasn't changed. What do consumers want? And how can what brands do and retailers do overlap with their wants in an authentic way? Like, that is really the mission. That's easier said than done. All of that PTSD that's come from all of those big things we just talked about, it's still the same mission. Customers' wants or needs may change, but figuring out what they are and delivering against them is the objective.
You know, Jeff, you mentioned tariffs. I'll remind our audience that we tend to think about tariffs in terms of all those wonderful consumer electronics and other things that we get in our Amazon box that's built overseas. A lot of people don't realize, like, 95% of the world's consumable garlic comes from China, right? Tariffs have an important effect on what we eat, not just, what we buy and what consumer electronics we say. So it's going to have a monumental effect on what we're doing. The other thing I wanted to highlight, you said, is, the scarcity of resources during the pandemic and the inflation that was coming out of it. To some degree, the question was, did you want to have products as a retailer on your shelf? If you did, then that was kind of the reality of the situation. But now we're a couple of years away from that. The supply chains have freed up, right? And now you have the ability to take alternate brands, to expand out your private brands and fill yourselves. So these brands that took, big price increases, right? They're now facing a very different competitive world a couple of years out from the pandemic, and consumers have a lot of choices. And so, to your point, there's a lot of change going on, right?
Well, while we refer to garlic, here's some good data to benchmark us, right? The beloved McDonald's French fry. That's going to be challenged by the tariffs. Like, who would have thought? And the simple reason is 69% of the canola oil we use in the US is actually imported. Peter, want to guess where 96% of that 69% comes from? Which means approximately 67% of the canola oil that we import in America comes from Canada. And who are we having a tariff war with? Then, on top of that, I thought all our actual potato, the fries themselves, are from Idaho. No, we import $1.7 billion of frozen French fries, which is what is served in fast food restaurants. So the consequences, as Jeff has already pointed out, are significant. But Jeff, if I had a crystal ball 4 years ago, I still remember you in my conversation, 2022. To some extent, I do feel collectively again, hindsight is 2020, and if I had a crystal ball, I'm qualifying my comment with that. But I think as an industry, we really went a bit far with inflation. Um, and the resultant, and that's my next question to you, Jeff. We are at a crisis moment from a volume growth perspective, Peter. It doesn't matter whether it's a brand or it's everyday retail. So I don't see a way out of this without depth and frequency of promo coming back. As a center store captain here for a Northeast captain in grocery, are you communicating that to brands? Like, isn't that the message that should go to brands? Like, guys, if you want to move volume and be conscientious to your consumers, simple frequency won't cut it. Depth has to come back as well.
Yeah, 100%. It's depth with a simplistic ad program, right? Like we have seen depth with multiple hurdles, but customers have so many choices now, to your point, that if you give them depth, but they've got to do 15 things to get to it, it's not going to matter.
And I think that's the problem now, Jeff. They're getting the depth with add that's digital coupon, this rewards program, combine it with this, combine it with that, and make sure on Thursday afternoon at 4 p.m. you've logged on to something, right? I'm talking back to basics, Jeff. Isn't this the time for like, I want to see an end cap display, I want to see a lobby display, I want to see a shipper, and it's got the price point called out. And if it's 2 for 7, it says 2 for 7 with the depth required. And I want to see it many more times, which is the frequency, not just during seasonal occasions. And the one that comes to my mind, Jeff, that Wakefern has been elite at over the years is the can program. Are we going to see a return to the 99-cent can? Isn't that almost a requirement for brands?
Listen, I think that's up to the brands to see what they can bring forward, but we certainly go out, and my team does an amazing job. And we had best-in-class partnerships on that front when you were there, Sri, and I'd like to think we still do with the team that's there to put together a program where we both lean in and deliver for the customer. But what your larger sentiment is the foundation of that program and what it was built on is exactly what you just talked about and exactly where we see the biggest customer response. And it's where we need.
Back to basics, foot traffic. So Jeff, my question now is going to flip over to the other side of the fence, which is e-commerce. CPG companies, brands face a lot of disruption. We kind of talked about it a little bit, and changing consumer behaviors that you've already highlighted pretty well. E-commerce on its own, is click and collect the way forward? What is the biggest shift you're seeing in that space? And where are you anchoring?
Well, I think to me, the biggest trend that is on our radar is how easy it is for even a loyal shopper to cheat on you. Like that's just a fact, right? We would love to say our most loyal shopper gives us 90% of their wallet. It's nowhere near that. And the number of choices and the amount of media opportunities that brands and retailers have to grab consumers creates a challenge when you're trying to grow loyalty. And for us, we've got to find a way to continue to reach customers in a personalized manner, right? Whether that's 1-to-1 or a few to one is to be seen, and it depends on the intent of the offer. But customers are certainly very aware of what value is, and if you want them to be loyal, you've got to be loyal back to them and give them what they need. Just a fact. Whether that's click and collect, delivery, or something with a marketplace is really up to the customer and their state of mind. Our job is to make sure we meet their needs where they're at.
And the last one of that, I know Peter's waiting to ask you a follow-up, but retail media, I have to ask the question, friend or foe, fact or fiction?
So I think retail media has become this catch-all word in the industry for the dollars that are invested to talk about a brand. They're not productive in the trade, right? So for us, retailers are all aware of what some of the biggest players in the world are looking at from a retail media spend expectation. The way we look at it is how do we make sure that those dollars deliver a point of view and a message to a customer and make sure that that connection is emotional for them so that they want to shop with us. We cannot be outpositioned by the retailers when it comes to retail media from an investment standpoint. But it's incumbent upon us to show the return on ad spend to get those dollars, right? There is no CPG in the world that can afford to be flexed on and write a blank check. There's got to be return on ad spend. There just has to be. Our capabilities and our customer base help us drive those results.
So, Jeff, if I think back, probably starting in the 1950s was really when, as retailers increased in size, there started the age of consolidation. Up until maybe 5 or so years ago, the consolidation of points of distribution into national and super regional retailers to some degree put retailers in an enviable position in terms of the balance of power between brands and retailers. That is changed to the point you made, with retailers seeking to become media publishers and attract some of those dollars, to your point, that can help brands create an emotional connection with consumers, and to your desire to make sure that those connections ultimately deliver outcomes that those consumers are buying those brands in your stores, right? So I guess my question to this is, where do you see the balance of the relationship between brands and retailers playing out over the next 5 or so years? What is going to further change in terms of how brands and retailers collaborate with the customer at the center of their decision making that are going to lead for better outcomes for everybody?
I think that will likely vary by brand and what their individual philosophy is, right? I think that the ones who win will not make the easy one-year decision to right-size their investment in what looks like a fleeting return. Because at least if I were to back up, the digital expenses that we talk to CPGs about typically are the ones that are easiest to rationalize out of a marketing plan. When you think about price and promo and how that can instantly drive a result, that's great. But if you're looking to maintain loyalty and brand relevancy with the consumer, you've got to lean in. So I think that the winners over the next 5 years are the ones that are going to continue to lean in there. It's table stakes at this point that you've got to play in that space. It's incumbent upon us as retailers to make sure that we have the capabilities to deliver that message. I mean, that's really the crux of this. Is I believe that this will continue to be an area where CPGs invest. Certainly, they're going to get smarter about who's winning and who's losing and who they want to invest in. I don't think it'll just be the largest players who have the biggest voice that get their fair share. It will be results based. It will be those who can reach customers in a personalized way that win their lion's share of the investment.
Jeff, one of the words that come to mind that I've certainly been mulling over the last couple of, I still remember to the date. It was March 17, 2023 was the first time I was looking at a scorecard, and the year ago comparison started to fall off the charts. We thought for 6 months it would be a year overlap, and then it's never changed, right? But one of the words that come to mind is, traditionally, the relationship between brand and retail has been built off, even if they're soft, a JBP, a joint business plan. It's a plan. There's a soft commitment or a hard commitment to a certain growth goal and the corresponding investments that come with it. And the accountability, holding people's feet to the fire, comes from both sides. But it's a fixed plan. To me, the future is JVC, or joint value creation. Value creation, you gave the example of you and I are both saying back to basics. Are we creating value for the consumer? That should be at the center of it. And the mission and purpose of a partnership between a brand and a retailer all year long is JVC. And as long as that mission and an agreed and identified mission of creating value for the consumer is at the center of it, things like retail media, click and collect, understanding and implementing personalization, shippers in store, they all become the surround on tactics to achieve that. I mean, I'd love to hear when I say JVC, is there anything that stokes an emotion comes to your mind?
I think we're also battling with, what does JBP even mean? And is it this term that just feels good in September, October of every calendar year that we're going to get together and chart a plan and for the following calendar? We are also looking to reinvent how we do that. We've got a process in place this year that's just started, and we're going to build on it for 26. For us, it's really about continuous planning, right? We've seen at their worst, the JBP be a document that you've put together and you don't revisit it until the following year when you do the next one. And for us, it's really about that mutual accountability that you talked about, right? We've developed a plan. what is the cadence of communication on that plan, and how do you continue to look at results and reforecast where you go forward? I love the idea of customer metrics integrated into that plan, so you are making sure that you've created value and not just a sales plan with no context. So I do think that that's where this world will go. I would.
A reminder to audience that I'm speaking with Jeff Mondelli from Wakefern Food Corp. So Jeff, in that realm, what advice do you have for CPG companies that have kind of struggled to adapt to today's Omni 360 consumer world, and on top of that are facing these inflationary pressures of volume?
So some of this we talked about, but I think at the front of it is a reminder about how important loyalty is, consumer loyalty, whether that's to a brand or a retailer, and that brands have to have relevancy with their customer base. If they're not relevant, that's a dangerous place to be with so many options on the shelf. Same for retailers. If you're not relevant, a lot of places to go to shop, right? So if a customer wants to be engaged digitally, brands have to engage digitally. It's just a cost of entry. Traditional marketing approaches, even some of the relatively newer ones, they may not meet the mark if a customer is looking for a personalized experience. These types of things, again, they're base expectations that you have to meet. I get that there's a cost to serve for these things, but we need to deliver. Otherwise, you're going to fall behind. Just a fact.
In this digital age, Joe, retailers and brands are at no loss for data. There is so much data out there. There are signals around purchasing behavior. There's first-party data. There's third-party data. There's everything. If I'm a sun care, a sunscreen manufacturer, I care about when the UV index in a particular set of cities is important, because that can dictate whether people are going to come in and buy my product, right? So I guess my question is, how do you recommend CPG manufacturers best leverage data and analytics to improve their operations, their marketing, and their customer engagement? Like where should they be spending their time? Because they could be boiling the ocean, and they need to be more efficient. What should they be doing?
So I think there's really like parts to this question. What can we be doing to make sure that the dialogue is productive? And then how can we do it better, right? So first piece of this, it starts really with open and honest conversation up front, because every retailer and every CPG has different success metrics. And I'll just make up an example. If Sri would have come into me 3 years ago looking for all of his innovation to come in, and my measure of success is more around productivity of existing SKUs and sales per square foot, we're really never going to align on the business plan. So I think we gotta, when we put a plan together, understand what's important to each party, and then backwards from there, build what are the metrics we're going to look at as our North Star. Certainly, you've got to have a mix of syndicated data and customer shopper data within each retailer's ecosystem. That is a must. But I think the miss really is not actually aligning on the success metrics based on each individual organization. If that doesn't happen, I know that's not the sexy answer, but that's the reality. That's where it starts. You never really get to a productive conversation. And we've seen it time and time again. We've worked really hard because we're not absent of blame oftentimes in that. Worked really hard to get to that first. So we're starting on the same page. The second piece of this is, how do we do it better? And I don't really have a great answer other than, as an industry, we are likely not leveraging technology as effectively as we could. All of those data sources you said, I don't know that anyone's kind of figured out I hate to use the term AI, but the AI solution to mine through all this data and just spit out the insights, because we still spend an awful lot of time either writing or I should say telling the story of what just happened rather than writing the next story. And there are tools that can help us tell us what happened.
The one you pointed out, Jeff, of the unaligned metrics is actually, I think, a crisis moment. Again, if I had a crystal ball and I could undo it over my career, I should have personally done a better job of listening to retailers. At the end of the day, if you're a warehouse manufacturer, which is what, 60-70% of everything in store, the retailer actually has the endpoint POS and the traffic, and the single most important metric to come to mind for me that as a brand manufacturer we've never focused on. One is category growth versus individual your own brand growth. You get selfish because of the Nielsen and Circana share metrics. That's all you focus on. But if you are somehow contributing to overall category growth, your share growth will automatically follow suit. And as an industry, we've never geared ourselves on that metric. The second one is traffic. If we can drive traffic to the store and we can drive incremental traffic, new household to that given retailer, automatically it's an elixir for all woes. Would you agree those two things? Like if there was a message you and I were communicating out, or you were communicating it out, Jeff, to brands, would those two metrics aligning on those rise to the top, or are there other ones?
I mean, certainly if you've got more traffic in the door, to your point, all else should take care of itself. And as far as a category centric approach versus any one brand approach, that's an imperative. So I would agree that
I think, Jeff, to the day when planogramming exercises take place and category management teams from brands pitch their ideas, even category captains, I'll be the first one to acknowledge, don't do a fabulous job of looking at category. It's always self centric. I'm not so sure how we flip that to be category oriented, but I feel that that's the second elixir. But in any event, Jeff, I'll move on to the next one, and which is, I think, a very important one, right? You guys are the heavyweights of the Northeast. No grocery business from a brand perspective can be successful in the Eastern Seaboard kind of area without a partnership with Wakefern. So it'd be great to hear you articulate for our listeners, especially those from the brands, agencies that support the brands. In your mind, Jeff, as a captain of merchandising, what does a best in class partnership with Wakefern look like for a CPG brand?
Yeah. So first of all, I love this question. I feel like you and I had that for sure. It is direct and honest communication. That's critical, even when it's not pleasant.
I love that you started with that, Jeff. I think when you have a transparent back and forth communication between a supplier and a retailer, at least you know what the stakes are, what's on the cards, what's realistic and what's not realistic.
For sure. And there's a way to have that conversation, right? Screaming and yelling doesn't really get you anywhere, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't very quickly understand my point of view and what mood that's put me in. And I think that always generates the best outcomes, especially for partners where there's trust already involved. So it's that, and then it's just a commitment to mutual goals, right? Loyalty, we just talked about loyalty and how customer loyalty is difficult to maintain. That's no different than retailer and supplier loyalty to each other. It's a difficult thing to maintain. And the ones that sustain year over year over year are ones that do just that, communicate open and honest and share mutual goals, right? Our best partners plan very transparently with us. They actually want to understand what's important to us. They want to understand our customer goals, our community goals. And then when they understand them, they build plans around them with us. You mentioned Can. We have a huge Partners in Caring program where we fight hunger in the community. Those are two very big ones. Our best partners ask about them. They want to understand them and they want to understand how to support them. But listen, reciprocity is important here. If that's my expectation of our partners, I should be willing and able to understand what our partners' goals and objectives are and help them meet them as well.
Where does retail media and e-commerce investments come into that conversation?
I would say at the outset, you have, at least without detail, here's what we've done last year. Here's where we think we need to go to grow, right? So if the total pie is X, here's how we want to reallocate that or redistribute it to grow the pie for both of us. And once we can align on the macro, that's when we'll break out and have the specialists go to work on how to build that plan. And then we put it all together at the end and make sure it rolls up how we like. And then again, I talked about continuous planning a little while ago. We've got the plan, but what is the cadence of our communication throughout the year?
Jeff, one more thing kind of surfaces to the top of mind for me on that angle, and it's investments for innovation. We're living in a very different world than we've lived 5 years ago, where a lot of innovation is discovered by the consumer on social channels like TikTok, Instagram Reels, streaming TV, just a variety of new ways they're bombarded with communication. In that world, when they come to you with new innovation they want to bring to the store, is one of the best in class pieces of the partnership a surround sound? Like, are you guys asking, bring me a 360 plan? And for the first time, are you yourself getting curious about, hey, what's the media plan way outside Wakefern? Like, what's the national reach? Are you going to be on TV? Do you have, even though I hate to use the words, there's some reality of linear still works today. So you guys asking for a sound plan, is that even important?
Is absolutely important. Within our current continuous business planning process, we have a whole call out for innovation and distribution where we expect, at least for A plus launches, what is the full plan? Not just we've got this line extension in this flavor, it'll be in store in April, you're going to take it. What are all the things that come with that to help us make sure we both launch with excellence?
So, Jeff, let me close out our conversation today. I know Shri agrees with me when I say that I know my success, and I've heard Shri speak about this as well, in this industry has been largely credited on the mentorship that we have been afforded through our careers. Formal, informal mentors that have helped guide us in making better decisions, making us smarter, and helping make our efforts successful. I'd love to hear from you some big piece of advice that you've received during your career, and how did that shape your success in the industry you've pursued?
So it's not very complex. It's two words, and it's a double-edged sword. This is a little dangerous for me because if Paul Patton or Darren Caudell, who I report to, are listening, I know this is going to come with special project or homework. But the philosophy that's been passed on to me is just simple: say yes. And I mean that specifically to opportunities, right? Because certainly, if you want to be an effective leader, you have to be very comfortable saying no. But when you're presented with an opportunity, especially one that you're not comfortable with, or maybe doesn't excite you, it might even scare you, probably is in your best interest to say yes. Saying yes has done a lot for me. It's very powerful. It's put me in rooms I would have never been in before. It's allowed me to build a network with people like both of you in this industry. Put me on stage at speaking engagements for topics that I'm not an expert in. People probably would shy away from that. But I lean in on those things and force myself to learn. So when I get up there, I at least look like I know what I'm talking about. It's put me in rooms and positions within my organization I wouldn't have had the opportunity to be in. And it's allowed me to lead an incredible category management team that teaches me every day. So I would encourage future leaders, current leaders.
Jeff, you actually bring back a memory in my own life how my career got shaped in 2012. I was working in the dollar drug convenience channel in sales leadership at Frito, and I really loved being at a customer. I mean, you know, Jeff, in your interactions with me, that being in the field was important to me, and I enjoyed that part of the job the most, being with retailers, being in store. And my then manager, boss, who was the chief customer officer for Frito, Vivek, who eventually went on to run Albertsons, said to me one day, "You're going to start e-com for Frito, and that's your full-time job." And I'm said to myself, I must have done something wrong in my career. Complete failure. I wanted to be East Coast VP for Frito. Didn't happen. And I gave up and said, I need to find a new profession. And I came home depressed that night. And I said it to my wife, we're going to be leaving Texas soon. And the worst thing happened to me today. And my wife looked at me squarely in the eye and said to me, if a chief customer officer of Frito-Lay, your boss, thinks it's a good idea, you should at least give it a shot for 60 days and say yes. And if you do, and you find after 60 days it was a bad idea, judge. But there's a reason he's the chief customer officer of Frito. And of course, years later, there's a reason why he was the CEO of Albertsons and I wasn't, because I didn't have the foresight to see it. But I'll tell you, Jeff, if I hadn't said yes and accepted it and embraced it, I wouldn't be a CPG guy today. So I think back to that moment. It does require reflection when a manager gives feedback on going with the positivity of it first, finding the value of it first before criticizing, and exploiting it, taking advantage of it to the extent feasible before judging. And what a great way you've summarized it in one simple word, right? Saying yes. And I cannot thank you enough for that. And Jeff, I think the discussion will be incomplete if I don't ask you one question kind of out of bounds over here, which is you use the word AI. What trends are you following these days?
So I mentioned a minute ago that I was on a panel, a speaking engagement, and it was at NGA this past winter, talking about the use of AI in pricing optimizations. And really what it showed me was that no one's got the answer, despite what you read a lot of times about the proliferation of technology in this space. Where we are seeing inroads is just the ability to rapidly sift through tremendous amounts of data to help get tasks done. Right? That's clearly not where it's going to end. It will wind up doing some things in the critical thinking space that are just scary and I can't wrap my head around. But for now, there are some things we do today that we could do with excellence if we leveraged AI a little bit more effectively. And I've challenged supplier partners to go out there and find those solutions for us, whether it's more effectively linking my private label items to my competitors' private label items for pricing optimization, or identifying spec differences between certain produce items that I carry versus someone else. There's no need for a sea of analysts to go mine that data anymore. And we need to continue to push the envelope and find solutions so we can deliver for customers at a faster rate.
Well said indeed, Jeff. Let me remind our audience that you can find all of our content simply going to a web browser and typing cpgguys.com with the URL. If you find someone you know that has something to contribute to this ongoing discussion on the CPG Guys in this industry, please drop us a line at contact@cpgguys.com. Again, that email is contact@cpgguys.com. To our audience, I can't say enough thank yous for the clicks, likes, comments, direct messages, meeting us at trade shows, coming to our events, our dinners, our networking parties, recording episodes with us like Jeff was gracious enough to do today. We are always grateful for you. To our sponsors, the show doesn't exist without you. You work with us all year. We're grateful to have you as a partner. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Generous of you to make time during a busy week. For the CPG Guys, it was a pleasure to have you.
Yep. Thank you both. Appreciate the time.
That's a wrap of this episode. We will see you soon on another episode of the CPG Guys.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.